The Vorthan Empire ruled over countless worlds across 3 giant arms of our galaxy. Their ships looked like massive crystal diamonds floating through space, beautiful but deadly. For over 1,000 years, no one had dared to challenge their power. They were the kings of the stars, and they knew it. Admiral Corax was one of their best commanders. He had conquered 47 different worlds without losing a single battle. Today, he stood in his command center, staring at a hologram of a small blue planet spinning around an ordinary yellow sun. To him, it looked like just another easy target. His young assistant, barely old enough to serve on a warship, pulled up data on his screen. The information came from radio signals they had been listening to for months. "Sir, this planet sends out lots of broadcasts. Most of them show people growing food and fighting small wars over land and resources. Our computers rank them as Class 7, which means they are still very primitive." Corax smiled coldly. He had seen this pattern many times before. A species would develop just enough technology to send radio waves into space, but they would still be focused on simple things like farming and local conflicts. These civilizations always surrendered quickly when faced with the Empire's superior technology. The Admiral walked closer to the hologram, watching the blue world turn slowly. He could see the brown and green continents, the white clouds swirling over vast oceans. It reminded him of dozens of other worlds he had claimed for the Empire. "What do they call themselves?" he asked. "Humans, sir. They seem to spend most of their time arguing with each other and growing crops. Very typical for a developing species. They have not even built proper space colonies yet." Corax nodded. The pattern was always the same. Young civilizations focused on their home planet while fighting petty wars among themselves. They never looked up at the stars to see the real threats coming. It made his job almost boring. "How long since they developed radio technology?" Corax asked, still studying the planet. "About 100 of their years, sir. They have sent a few small vehicles to their moon and nearby planets, but nothing significant. No real space military to speak of." The Admiral had heard enough. This would be another quick victory to add to his record. Begin standard first contact protocol. Target their largest moon for destruction. Once they see what our weapon can do, they will beg to join the Empire peacefully. The massive Vorthan fleet moved into position. 30 warships, each one capable of destroying entire cities, arranged themselves in perfect formation. The lead vessel charged its main weapon, a beam so powerful it could split planets in half. They had used this tactic hundreds of times before. Show overwhelming force, destroy something important but not vital, then wait for surrender. The weapon fired. A brilliant lance of pure energy shot across space at the speed of light. Earth's moon, hanging peacefully in the void, simply vanished. In a flash of superheated gas and debris, where Luna had existed for billions of years, only glowing chunks of rock remained. Slowly spreading outward in all directions, Corax watched the destruction with satisfaction. Now, we wait for their surrender message. Most species respond within minutes once they realize what they are facing. His crew settled in to wait. Some played games on their personal devices. Others took naps. A few made bets on how long it would take for the humans to give up. The longest anyone guessed was 2 hours. But instead of a surrender signal, something else began happening. Every sensor on every Vorthan ship suddenly came alive with urgent warnings. Massive energy readings were appearing all across the human solar system, not just near the blue planet, but everywhere. On the red planet they called Mars, in the asteroid belt between planets, on small moons orbiting gas giants billions of miles away. Corax stared at his displays in growing confusion and concern. According to his instruments, the entire star system was lighting up with military installations, weapons platforms, defensive shields, spacecraft launching from hidden bases. The energy signatures were enormous, far too large for a primitive farming civilization to produce. "This is impossible," he whispered, watching as his easy conquest transformed into something he had never seen before. Colonel Mike Thompson had been waiting for this moment for 30 long years. He stood on the command bridge of the Defiance, a massive fortress that had been carved directly into the dark side of Ceres, the largest asteroid in our solar system. From the outside, it looked like just another lifeless rock floating through space. The aliens had passed right by it dozens of times, without ever suspecting that. Thousands of humans lived and worked inside. Thompson watched through reinforced windows as chunks of what used to be Earth's moon drifted past like glowing embers. His jaw was set tight with anger, but his voice remained calm and steady. Around him, dozens of officers sat at control stations that had been built decades ago but never used. Until now, these men and women had trained their entire careers for a war that might never come. They had practiced the same drills thousands of times, memorized emergency procedures, and kept their weapons maintained and ready. Many of them had been born on this asteroid base, children of the first generation, who had volunteered to spend their lives preparing for an alien invasion that everyone hoped would never happen. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez sat at the communications station, her fingers dancing across holographic controls that connected her to every human military installation in the solar system. She had grown up hearing stories about Earth from her parents, but she had never actually walked on the planet's surface. Now she might never get the chance. "All stations report ready, sir," she announced, her voice carrying across the bridge. "Mars Command confirms weapons platforms online. Asteroid Belt Defense Network is active. Jupiter Station is launching fighters. Saturn Base reports all missile batteries armed and ready." Thompson nodded slowly. Each of those confirmations represented years of secret construction, hidden from alien surveillance satellites. What the Vorthans thought were simple mining operations on Mars had actually been the construction of the most powerful weapons humanity had ever built. Those agricultural settlements growing food in Martian greenhouses had concealed missile silos deep underground, each one containing enough firepower to destroy a city. The colonel reached for his command microphone, the one connected to every human ship, base, and station across the solar system. His words would reach over 2 million soldiers, pilots, and technicians who had spent their lives preparing for this day. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we've been preparing for," Thompson said, his voice carrying to Mars bases hidden beneath red sand dunes, 2 weapons platforms disguised as mining equipment in the asteroid belt, 2 fighter squadrons launching from secret hangars on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. "They destroyed our moon. They thought we were helpless farmers. They were wrong. Show them what happens when you threaten Earth." Across the solar system, humanity revealed its true nature. On Mars, what looked like simple dome-shaped farms suddenly split open like flowers, revealing massive gun barrels that rose toward the sky. The red planet had been transformed into a fortress world, its entire surface bristling with weapons that had been hidden for decades. In the asteroid belt, chunks of rock that had drifted peacefully through space for years suddenly came alive with engine fire and weapon systems. These weren't natural asteroids at all, but camouflaged battle stations, each one powerful enough to take on multiple enemy ships. Humanity had turned the entire belt into a deadly maze of hidden fortresses. Near Jupiter, what alien scouts had recorded as research stations studying the gas giant's moons suddenly revealed their true purpose. Fighter craft poured out of hidden launch bays, their pilots ready for the battle they had trained their whole lives to fight. The Defiance itself began to move, its massive bulk slowly turning toward the alien fleet, along with her sister ships, vessels that had been designed from the ground up, not for peaceful exploration, but for war. She represented humanity's final answer to those who would threaten their home world. Colonel Thompson smiled grimly as his sensors showed the alien fleet's confusion and growing panic. For 30 years, humanity had watched and waited, building and preparing. Now, it was time to show the galaxy what happened when you picked a fight with the most dangerous predators in the universe. Admiral Corax had commanded fleets for over 400 years. He had fought against the crystal warriors of Andromeda, the hive minds of the Outer Rim, and the machine civilizations beyond the galactic core. Every species he had ever encountered followed the same basic rules of warfare. They formed battle lines, traded long-range fire, and retreated when losses became too heavy. War was about strategy, formation, and preserving your forces while destroying the enemies. But these humans were different. Terrifyingly different. Corax stood frozen on his command deck, watching his tactical display with growing disbelief. His 12 massive dreadnoughts, each one a kilometer long and armed with enough firepower to level mountains, faced off against what should have been easy prey. The human ships were smaller, with thinner armor and fewer weapons. By every military calculation he knew, this should have been a simple cleanup operation. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, his voice shaking slightly, "the enemy vessels are not maintaining proper combat formation. They're scattered across a three-dimensional battlefield in patterns that make no sense." Corax squinted at the holographic display. The human ships moved like nothing he had ever seen before. Instead of the orderly battle lines used by every civilized species, they darted and weaved through space like wild animals. Some hid behind asteroids, others accelerated to dangerous speeds, and a few were actually moving directly toward his much larger warships. "They must be inexperienced," Corax muttered, trying to convince himself. No trained military force would abandon formation tactics. That's when Captain Jake Miller proved him wrong. Miller commanded a human destroyer called the Wolverine, a ship barely 1/10 the size of a Vorthan dreadnought. According to all military logic, he should have stayed at maximum range and tried to pick off smaller escort vessels. Instead, he did something that no sane commander would ever attempt. The Wolverine burst out of an asteroid field at nearly 10% the speed of light, far faster than any warship should ever travel in combat. Miller had disabled his ship's safety systems and pushed the engines beyond their design limits. His vessel screamed through space like a bullet fired from the darkness. Corax watched in stunned silence as the tiny human ship slammed straight through his flagship's shields, as if they weren't even there. The impact should have destroyed the destroyer instantly, but Miller had timed everything perfectly. His ship's fusion reactor went critical at the exact moment it penetrated the dreadnoughts. Hold on, the explosion lit up space like a newborn star. When the light faded, Corax's flagship was gone, along with the Wolverine and everyone aboard her. But the nuclear blast had been so powerful that it also crippled 2 nearby Vorthan cruisers, their systems fried by the electromagnetic pulse. One human ship had taken out 3 alien vessels by simply ramming into them and exploding. What kind of warriors sacrifice themselves like that? Lisa Bennett led her fighter squadron into battle. Bennett commanded 20 small human craft, each one no bigger than a shuttle. They faced over 100 Vorthan fighters, sleek vessels that should have torn the humans apart with superior numbers and firepower. But instead of retreating or trying to even the odds through clever tactics, Bennett did something that chilled Corax to his core. She ordered her entire squadron to accelerate directly toward the enemy formation at maximum speed. The human pilots came screaming through space, their communications channels filled with battle cries and war songs. They weren't trying to win a traditional dogfight. They were turning their own fighters into guided missiles, aiming for the largest enemy targets they could find. Bennett's voice cut through the radio chatter, clear and determined. "For Luna, for Earth, take as many as you can with you." Her fighter slammed into a Vorthan bomber, the explosion chain reacting through the tightly packed enemy formation. Other human pilots followed her example, their small craft punching through enemy shields through pure speed and reckless courage. Within minutes, the Vorthan fighter screen was in chaos, with burning wrecks tumbling through space. Korax stared at the tactical display, his hands shaking. He had lost over half his fleet in less than an hour, not through superior enemy technology or brilliant strategy, but because these humans fought like they had nothing left to lose. They treated their own lives as just another weapon to be used against their enemies. "Admiral," his communication officer called out nervously, "we're receiving surrender demands from the human fleet." Korax almost laughed. "They want us to surrender. They're outnumbered 3-1. But as he looked at his remaining ships, damaged and demoralized, facing an enemy that seemed willing to die to achieve victory, Korax realized something that terrified him. Numbers didn't matter when your enemy considered death an acceptable price for your destruction. The emergency alert reached every corner of the Vorthan Empire within hours. Admiral Korax's distress signal painted a terrifying picture of humans who fought like wild beasts, sacrificing their own lives to destroy enemy ships. The Empire's High Command immediately ordered massive reinforcements to the human solar system. 3 entire battle fleets, over 200 warships, began their journey toward Earth. But Commander Tom Harris had been expecting this reaction for 30 years. Harris ran the most secret division of human military intelligence. His people didn't wear uniforms or march in parades. They lived in the shadows, spending decades learning everything they could about alien civilizations. While the rest of humanity prepared for open war, Harris and his teams had been fighting a different kind of battle. One fought with stolen identities, hacked computers, and carefully placed explosives. His best operative was Sergeant Kate Morgan, a woman who could speak 12 alien languages and had spent the last 5 years living on Vorthan stations under a false identity. To her alien neighbors, she was just another trader, moving cargo between systems. In reality, she had been mapping every Vorthan military installation within 100 light-years of Earth. Morgan stood in the cargo bay of Proxima Station, the Empire's largest supply depot. Around her, thousands of tons of weapons, fuel, and spare parts waited to be loaded onto the reinforcement fleets. She looked like any other dock worker in her stolen uniform, but the device in her hands could change the course of the war. "Package delivered," she whispered into her hidden communicator, placing the small electronic device next to the station's main computer core. The device looked harmless, no bigger than a coin, but it contained decades of human computer programming designed specifically to break Vorthon security systems. Within minutes, something incredible happened. Proxima Station's own defense network, an array of massive guns designed to protect the facility from enemy attack, slowly turned toward the Vorthon reinforcement fleet. The alien commanders watched in confusion as their own weapons locked onto their ships. The guns opened fire. The first salvo destroyed 6 cruisers before the fleet even realized what was happening. Panicked Vorthan captains tried to contact the station, demanding to know why they were being attacked by their own defenses. But the station's communication system was now controlled by human hackers working from secret bunkers on Earth. People who had spent 20 years learning how Vorthan technology worked. "This is Proxima Station," came the response in perfect Vorthan language. "You are trespassing in human space. Surrender immediately, or be destroyed." The fleet tried to retreat, but Morgan had been busy for months. Every fuel depot, repair station, and supply cache along their escape route had been similarly compromised. The Vorthans found themselves trapped in a web of their own infrastructure, turned against them by an enemy they had underestimated. Meanwhile, Captain Dave Wilson was executing the second phase of Harris's plan. Wilson commanded 3 strike teams that had been positioned near major Vorthan colonies for over a year. His orders were simple but devastating. Hit multiple targets simultaneously to create maximum confusion. At exactly the same moment, Wilson's team struck on the mining world of Kepler 442. They destroyed the planetary communication array, cutting off all contact with the outside galaxy. On the industrial center of Wolf 359, they sabotaged the main power grid, plunging entire cities into darkness. On the agricultural planet of Glee 667, they contaminated the water supply with harmless but foul-tasting chemicals, causing mass panic among the population. Each attack was carefully planned to cause maximum disruption while killing as few civilians as possible. The humans weren't trying to commit genocide. They were demonstrating that nowhere in Vorthon space was safe from their reach. The psychological effect was devastating. Within days, reports flooded in from across the Empire. Mysterious explosions at military bases, computer systems failing for no apparent reason, supply convoys disappearing without a trace. The Vorthons realized that these humans had been inside their territory for years, watching, learning, and preparing. But the most terrifying discovery came when Vorthon intelligence tried to investigate these attacks. They found evidence that humans had been studying not just the Vorthon Empire, but every major civilization in the galaxy. Hidden observation posts on dozens of worlds, intercepted communications from hundreds of species, detailed files on the military capabilities, political weaknesses, and technological vulnerabilities of races. The Vorthians had never even heard of Earth, had never been an isolated farming world. It had been the center of the largest intelligence operation in galactic history. For over a century, humans had been quietly watching everyone, learning their secrets, and preparing for the day when they would need to defend themselves. The galaxy's greatest powers received the same chilling message. Humanity had been studying them all along. Admiral Corax had commanded the most powerful military force in the known galaxy just 6 months ago. Now he sat in a detention cell aboard a human warship, his once magnificent uniform torn and stained, his hands shaking as he tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. The cell was surprisingly comfortable. The humans had given him a soft bed, decent food, and even access to entertainment programs from their homeworld. They weren't cruel captors, but that somehow made his defeat even more humiliating. He had expected barbarians, not civilized warriors who treated their prisoners with dignity. General Beth Carter entered the small room, carrying 2 cups of what the humans called coffee. She wore a simple green uniform with minimal decorations, nothing like the elaborate ceremonial armor that Vorthon officers preferred. Her face was weathered by years of military service, and her gray hair was pulled back in a practical style that spoke of someone who had spent more time in battle than in meetings. Carter sat down across from Corax and pushed one of the cups toward him. The liquid was dark and smelled bitter, but he found it surprisingly warming. She studied him with eyes that seemed to see right through him, eyes that held the weight of absolute victory. "How?" Corax finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "How did a primitive species defeat the Empire? We had superior numbers, better technology, thousands of years of military experience. Your people were supposed to be simple farmers." Carter leaned back in her chair, sipping her coffee slowly before answering. When she spoke, her voice was calm, but carried an edge of steel that made Corax shiver. "You destroyed our moon, Admiral. That moon wasn't just a rock floating in space. It held something precious to us." "What could be so important about a lifeless satellite?" Corax asked, genuinely confused. "Luna held the graves of our ancestors," Carter explained, her eyes growing distant as she looked toward the viewport, showing the stars beyond. "It was where we buried our first astronauts, the brave souls who died trying to reach the stars. It held the landing sites where humans first walked on another world, the footprints of children who dared to dream of touching the cosmos. That moon was our history, our hopes, our connection to everyone who came before us." Corax began to understand, but Carter wasn't finished. "When you vaporized Luna, you didn't just destroy a military target. You destroyed the graves of heroes, the monuments to human courage. The sacred sites, where our species took its first steps into the galaxy. You made a critical error, Admiral. What error? Corax whispered, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. Carter stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars that now belonged to a new galactic power. You made it personal. Humans are persistence hunters, Admiral. We evolved as predators who could chase our prey across continents, never giving up, never stopping, until our target collapsed from exhaustion. When we mark something as prey, we don't stop hunting until it's dead. She turned back to face him, and Corax saw something in her eyes that chilled him to the bone. It wasn't hatred or anger. It was the cold, calculating look of a predator that had successfully brought down its prey. Your empire became our prey the moment Luna died, Carter continued. Every human in the galaxy felt that loss personally. You didn't attack a government or a military. You attacked our family, our heritage, our soul. And we responded the way any apex predator responds when something threatens what we love. Outside the viewport, Corax could see the remnants of his once mighty fleet being escorted toward Earth by human warships. 300 vessels had started this campaign. Barely 30 survived, and most of those were damaged beyond repair. The greatest military force in galactic history had been broken by a species that had supposedly never fought a real war. Carter sat back down and continued. Right now, diplomatic ships from every major civilization in the galaxy are heading toward Earth. The Crystalline Confederacy, the Hive Worlds, the Machine Empire, even the mysterious Watchers from beyond the galactic rim. They're all coming to establish trade agreements and mutual defense pacts with humanity. Why? Corax asked, though he already knew the answer. Because we did, in 6 months, what no one thought was possible. We dismantled the Vorten Empire, the civilization that had dominated 3 spiral arms for over a millennium. And we did it not through superior technology or numbers, but through something far more dangerous. What? Carter smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We did it through patience, planning, and the absolute refusal to give up. Every species in the galaxy now knows that humans will wait decades for revenge, that we'll sacrifice everything to protect what we love, and that we never, ever stop hunting once we've chosen our prey. She stood to leave, pausing at the door. The age of Vorthan dominance is over, Admiral. The age of human expansion has begun, and it all started because you made the mistake of thinking we were harmless farmers. Corax sat alone in his cell, staring out at the stars that would soon know a new master. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about underestimating humanity, and he had been the one to teach it to them.